Hello everyone, and welcome back to another whiteboard video. Today I want to talk about why lat pull downs don't actually target the lats. Now, first and foremost, it's a little bit of clickbait. We're all guilty of it. Who cares? Let's add some nuance. What I really mean to say is oftentimes the way that people execute the traditional lat pull down is in such a way where the primary target muscle of the way that they do that technique is not actually the lats, right? But who wants to make that a YouTube title? So what do I really mean by this? Well, this is supposed to be a lat pull down machine. Here's supposed to be the cable stack. Here's the pull down bar. Here's a person. And a lot of times what happens is because the pulley is directly above the individual that sits down, what do people naturally do when they grab the bar and they get into the seat? Well, naturally, they, instead of just going like this and pulling down this way, because that doesn't feel particularly good, what people do is they lean backward to grab the bar, right? So instead of this kind of posture, people actually end up sort of more like this. So rather than grabbing the bar and pulling down in a sort of vertical direction, people, number one, lean backward. And what do they do number two? Well, let's just erase person number one here. So thing one is they lean back, and thing two is they tend to grab, let's just pretend these arms make sense right now. They grab wider on the bar. And I don't just mean like wider relative to shoulder width, I mean like pretty much at the end of the bar where there's these little like cambered things that people think that they have to grab. And then what do they do number three, because their hands are so wide, is they pull sort of outward in this sort of high row direction. In other words, they end up not really doing a pull down, i.e. something that would heavily bias the lats, whether it's wide grip or narrow grip. If you're doing a pull down, lats are recruited to a heavy degree. But if you lean back and you basically turn this motion into what is essentially a high row done on a lat pull down, well, now you're moving way away from lat territory, and now you're moving way more into territory like the upper back tissues, the rear delts, the teres major, the rhomboids, those sorts of things. So does this mean that, your lats all of a sudden just fall off your body and turn off when you do it this way? No, obviously not. But if we want to call something a lat exercise, just in the same way that we call a curl a biceps exercise, that muscle that is being supposedly targeted should be the rate limiter of the motion. That's how we actually divide exercises. So instead of taking this wide grip, what should we do instead to make it more of an actual lat pull down? Well, to do that, I want to hop over to my skeleton model to talk about some differences between arm paths and the way that we can set something up so that it is actually a true lat pull down rather than a sort of high row upper back thing. All right, so if we did a pull down in a way that a lot of people do, which is this super wide high row thing that we discussed, look at really where the lats are actually pulling. If I sort of move my finger along the rubber bands that are representing them, they would really all want to pull downward and tight to the body. In other words, if we trace their most shortened position all the way up, what would that arm path look like? Well, it would be something that's number one, more in front of the body, but number two, and sort of in tandem with that, also more narrow, right? So the grip, rather than grabbing all the way out here, it makes much more sense to grab more narrow, either in a neutral grip or something like a chin-up grip, where you can stay sort of more in front of your body instead of having to actually constrain your arms to pulling wider because your grip starts so wide. So if you're doing this kind of a wide thing, not a bad exercise by any means, but all the tissues that move the arm in this direction, i.e. more forward and backward with the arms out wide, those are the tissues, as I mentioned, like the rear delts, that are going to contribute a lot to that. But the second that we bring the arms sort of more forward and narrow into the body, and where we actually allow ourselves to be pulling in a more vertical direction, a more truly vertical direction, that's when all of our lats are going to really start to come on. So the primary takeaway is this, which is if you're going to do a lat pull down and you really actually want to make it lat focused, we don't want to end up rowing up and out to the sides like this away from our ribs. We want to bring our arms a little bit forward, a little bit tighter to the body. Whether you use a neutral grip, a pronated grip, or a supinated grip is up to you. Doesn't really matter as long as your arms are in the right position relative to the load. So that's main thing number one, is narrow the grip and keep the arms more in front of the body. And then number two, as you go through the pull down, instead of leaning all the way backward, try to keep your torso a little bit more upright and just move through a little bit of wiggle room to where that load direction can actually stay mostly vertical relative to your trunk and your arm. Now, if you want to learn more from me and if you want to join 2,000 other meatheads who are all learning about biomechanics, join my free online biomechanics community. It's in the link in the description. I hope to see you in there, and I hope to be able to answer any of your questions in the free community.